先輩が私に勝てたら、私の秘密、何でも一個教えてあげますよ。
長瀞の名前とか。
Hi there everyone, Lars here with another anime review brought to you by Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers. Because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends, and oh boy, the most recent episode of Don't Toy With Me Nagatoro Season 2 gave us a fantastic, sweet reveal. That being Nagatoro's first name, Hayase. This was a really incredible moment within the story for a variety of reasons, and I want to discuss how this really neat, though very small reveal was done perfectly. One of the very first things that we have to acknowledge is this, that within Japanese culture, there is a lot of emphasis on propriety, on manners, on being respectful. And this includes how you address people. There's many different kinds of honorifics and ways you can say a person's name to help distinguish the kind of relationship that you have with someone. And you don't immediately go and say your entire name to someone. That's just not respectful. That's not how it's done. Therefore, it's entirely okay for Senpai and Nagatoro to have not addressed each other by their actual names thus far. That's absolutely fine. And for us in the Western world, well, yeah, that's kind of strange and weird because you just don't do that. Even though there's many different cultures and many different languages that make up Western culture, we are way more open and loose with how we present ourselves and how we identify with other people, how we introduce ourselves, and how we interact with them. So it's important to understand that this is a big deal. Now, for a lot of weebs, for a lot of anime lovers, this is just something that we've come to accept. But this is a pretty big deal, especially within a romance story that they haven't shared their names with each other yet. And especially when we consider how the relationship has evolved between Senpai and Nagatoro, going from a weird toxic beginning where there was a lot of teasing and misunderstandings involved to them becoming friends. This is a pretty big step, especially as Senpai begins to acknowledge the fact that he has growing feelings for Nagatoro, or I guess now as we can call her Hayase, but I still kind of prefer saying Nagatoro. Now, to get this particular reveal, there's actually quite a bit of legwork that's put into it, and this goes to the previous episode, where Senpai finds himself stuck in a locker. Now then, I'm just going to say, I personally hate this romantic trope. I grew out of it when I left high school. Back when I was in high school, oh yeah, sure, the locker, whoo, there's so many secrets in a girl's locker, or in the locker that you might share with someone, and there are those big sports lockers in which you can stuff two people into. Ooh, really, none of that is romantic in any kind of way. Once you grow up and you're like, oh, that's nasty and disgusting. Why? But this particular moment where Senpai finds himself stuck in a janitorial locker, listening into Nagatoro's conversation with her friends about the people that they like, this is a pretty big thing, because it actually highlights two problems that Senpai has to overcome. Obviously, problem number one is that he doesn't know Nagatoro's name, and that through this misunderstanding of who she might be, yes, he figured out where he was supposed to go eventually, but if he had just known, hey, I need to speak to Hayase, the girls there would have been like, oh yeah, sure, she's right over here, and then he could have gone and had a normal conversation, say, hey, here, you left your phone back at the art club room. However, the second problem, which compounds the first, is that Senpai has a very hard time being around people that he doesn't know. And even though he knows Nagatoro's friends, well, he doesn't necessarily have the best relationship with them. There's still a growing friendship there. And so as such, he feels flustered, he feels ashamed, he feels embarrassed, and so he hides himself in a locker. Now, this whole locker scene is not only there to help highlight two problems that Senpai has to overcome, but it helps start to connect some dots for him where he realizes, oh, maybe Nagatoro actually does like me, though she constantly teases me, which I don't necessarily like, and he still has those misunderstandings, but hearing that conversation is a big step forward for him. And this leads then to him accepting that yeah, I'll go take Nagatoro's homework to her since she has been sick, she hasn't been around, and then boom, we have the confrontation over at the house. This is then where we get to the next part of the setup to learn Nagatoro's name, and that is Senpai running into Big Sis Nagatoro, Ane Toro, however we want to say her name right here. I'm just going to say the big sister, the evil, devilish big sister, who, as a more mature man myself, I'm just going to say that right there is a lady of culture, and I would absolutely totally go for her. But that's besides the point. Meeting up with the big sister is important because not only does this help Senpai learn a little bit more about the family, but this actually now opens up the door to him learning stuff about her. And here we get this really interesting, awkward moment where Senpai realizes he could ask about anything about his friend. He could learn anything about Nagatoro from her older sister. All he has to do is ask. But he, as a good Japanese person, he's going to make sure that he's respectful. He's not going to overstep any sort of boundaries, but he desperately wants to know, and the big sister is teasing him the entire way. Then when Nagatoro comes in and realizes, holy crap, Senpai's in the house, and I look disgusting, I don't look cute, this whole freak out, the sister then actually begins placing things in the right order, in the right framework, in order for them to actually have a good moment, because normally in real life, if you had this kind of an awkward moment, which I have been in these kinds of awkward moments, you don't come out of them really quickly. Not even sometimes in that day or even for a week. And the person's still like, you ended up at my house at the wrong time, buddy. And you're like, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to. Well, Big Sis steps on in and helps mull over everything with the pudding. And not just simply with pudding, but with all of the fruits and the cream. Ooh, the pudding a la mode. So delicious. So we now have the pudding there to help kind of mull things over, and Senpai is now in a situation where it's on his mind. Nagatoro's overheard it. Is there a secret that he wishes to learn? Is there something about her that he wants to find out about? And then also remember, he doesn't know her name. So all of the different pieces are now there for them to be in the room and have a conversation that leads to the name reveal. And of course, there's just more fun gags and whatnot to be thrown into the mix, such as Nagatoro teasing him, trying to coax out some sort of romantic moment in which he can obviously still tease him, which is feeding him the pudding. And I love that the anime adds in that the big sister is watching this through the crack in the door and of course steps in at that exact moment to just make things funny. She's going to tease her sister because she realizes that her sister is teasing her senpai. It's a great way to get them both flustered, and when people are flustered, people start talking and saying things that maybe they shouldn't, or maybe that they intended to but weren't going to say because they were meant to be respectful, and that's going to lead, of course, to more interactions between her little sister and her sister's senpai. And in that regard, Big Sis actually wins, because this leads then to Senpai sticking around longer, playing the game with Nagatoro, and putting a bet on the outcome of their fight, of their Super Smash Bros. Fight of, well, you get to learn something if you win. Senpai wins by default, and he wants to know Nagatoro's name, but he then declines because he's like, you know what, this is a big deal, we are who we are. Culturally, it's because it's so important, I don't want to just learn your first name because I beat you in a video game. That shouldn't be the way things go down. And then, of course, the sister now hearing that is what Senpai wants, she comes in and says very purposefully, Hayase. And that is how Senpai learns Nagatoro's first name. And what makes all of this work is that it's just this ridiculous progression of events that actually give us all of this great insight into the characters. The whole locker incident, finding out that Senpai doesn't know Nagatoro's first name, how embarrassed he is, how he's trying to keep up appearances and propriety, but he's ultimately failing at it, leading then to the friends picking up on, oh, Senpai is worried about our friend Nagatoro, we're going to send him to go and deliver the homework. Oh, now there's a misunderstanding. He he could be a stalker and Big Sis is going to turn him in. No, I'm just here. I've got her homework and a present for her. I just wanted to make sure she was fine, you know? Being led on in, Big Sis teasing him, Big Sis teasing Nagatoro, the whole pudding incident, and then the video game incident, which is neat. It's a neat callback to their earlier time when they were first with each other in Nagatoro's room, and this was just the beginning of their awkward friendship. We now see them having matured and grown up around each other, that while there's a lot of flirting and misunderstanding still happening, and a lot of teasing of course, they are way more comfortable around each other and can actually have way more meaningful conversations. And it's neat because it's not just reflected in how they hold themselves and how they interact, but also in how they play. Their game is way more serious than ever before. And this is all just fantastic subtlety in showing how their relationship has progressed since the beginning of season 1, and now in this funny culmination of all these other hilarious steps and jokes, Senpai now knows Nagatoro's first name. He now knows her as Hayase. And with that social boundary now having been breached, there is now room for their relationship to grow even more. And that is what this season is all about. Taking them from that friendship stage and now taking them more into that lovey-dovey stage of their growing relationship. And this is an important step. And there's so many anime and manga that already have these kinds of chapters and moments where, oh, I now get to know your name. Oh, the stars are shining, the full moon is out. When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. Yeah, that whole thing going down, and usually it feels forced and awkward and doesn't make sense even if you know the cultural context for these kinds of scenes. But here in Please Don't Toy With Me, Miss Nagatoro, we get a fantastic progression leading up to this point, so everything makes sense, it's been built up, and the culmination is delivered perfectly. Honestly, this was such a great episode. This was such a great scene. And it's very small and confined. There's not a whole lot happening in terms of movement, and yet it feels like you have been watching an hour's worth of a brilliant rom-com. That is strong writing. That is strong animation. That is strong payoff for all of the stuff that we've been given in the previous season and in the previous episodes of this season. So if there's any good writing advice to give from this particular episode, it is this. Romantic payoff works out best when you have done all of the groundwork, which takes time. And this is something that frustrates a lot of people when it comes to romance, is that a good romance takes time. You have to sculpt it like you're creating this beautiful sculpture. You have to take your time chiseling and molding in order to make it what you want it to be. But you have to make sure that you still have that good payoff. And one of the ways in which you can actually deliver that payoff is, rather than having the slog of setup and then boom, one good romantic moment, you have smaller little romantic moments leading up to the big reveal to show that indeed progress is being made. That is critical when writing a good romance. And then for the scene right here, don't overdo it. You don't need to have Senpai and Nagatoro now jumping under the sheets and doing the mattress tango together. No, you don't need to have that. Just having the blushing and the realizing that is her name, and realizing that they've shared a moment, even if it is ruined by Big Sis, that is in and of itself actually great progression, great payoff, and it just fits the atmosphere within the story so well. So that's all I've got to say right now about this particular installment of Nagatoro Season 2. If you're looking for more writing advice or reviews or analyses, then please check out our other videos here on our channel, Camille's Harem, or you can also head on over to our podcast found on Podbean, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, the works. We have writing exercises for all you novice authors out there over at our Pinterest page, and of course, we would love for you to join our ever-growing community of novice authors. Links for all that and more are in the description below, and if you would like to support us here at this channel, please check out our published books. Links in order to buy those are in the description. We would love for you to read some of our own original stories because they are fantastic. But until the next video, y'all, thank you for joining us on this romantic, hilarious, sometimes awkward adventure that we call writing. And until the next video, y'all, juice.
先輩くんと一緒に鑑賞しようじゃないか。あ、痩せちゃう